Recite every day, "Happy are those who are weeping, because the kingdom of God is for them." Always convert the blacks by using the whip. Keep their women in 9 months of submission to work freely for us. Force them to pay in sign of recognition, goats, chicken or eggs every time you visit their villages. And make sure that the new niggers never become rich. Sing every day that it's impossible for the rich to enter heaven. Make them pay tax each week at Sunday Mass. Use the money supposed for the poor to build flourishing business centers. Institute a confessional system which allows you to be good detectives, denouncing any black that has a different consciousness contrary to that of the decision maker. Teach the niggers to forget their heroes and to adore only ours. Never present a chair to a black that comes to visit you. Don't give him more than one cigarette. Never invite him for dinner, even if he gives you a chicken every time you arrive at his house. That's the end of King Leopold's secret letter, available on the internet. It appears the concluding page is missing. The missionaries successfully used the gospel to execute their demonic agenda of brainwashing the people of the Congo and preparing the ground for their colonization and enslavement. Then, whilst the missionaries were busy talking to the Africans about heaven and the New Jerusalem, King Leopold II commissioned Henry Morton Stanley to survey and map out the area the Belgian missionaries had been sent to establish their churches. And on 5th February 1885, exactly 3 weeks before the Berlin Conference came to an end, and by which time Stanley had finished his surveying assignment and had signed what was supposed to be friendship treaties with 450 Congo chiefs for his patron, King Leopold II used the paper endorsed by the Congo chiefs to claim the vast area demarcated by Stanley as his personal estate. But it must be noted that the Congo chiefs, being illiterate, did not know that the piece of paper they had thumb-printed or ticked, which they had been made to understand, meant they had accepted King Leopold II as a friend, rather authorized him to take their land free of charge, and that they had accepted him as their overlord. The territory King Leopold II claimed as his personal property is 2.345 million square kilometers in size, which is 910,000 square miles in imperial units. Thus, this makes the area approximately 10 times bigger than the United Kingdom, or about 4.5 times bigger than France. And Leopold registered it as the Congo Free State in the name of his private charity organization. The land and the people King Leopold II registered in Berlin as his personal property is known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. It is important to note that during the reign of his father, King Leopold I, Leopold II, then a young man, suggested to his dad that Belgium should own colonies in Africa like the other European powers. But his father, King Leopold I, and his governing council rejected the suggestion, as they thought that colonizing people was unethical and outmoded. However, soon after being crowned as the King of Belgium in 1865, after his father's death, Leopold II, then 30 years old, decided to implement his childhood ambition of owning at least a colony in Africa, but disguised his real intentions, as he knew that his people would oppose it like they did in the past. So in 1876, that is in the 11th year of his coronation, Leopold II held an international geographic conference at Brussels, and during the meeting appealed to his guests to help him fund and run a non-profit organization which had its full name translated into English as the International Association for the Exploration and Civilization of Central Africa, but it was simply referred to as the International African Association, or l'Association Internationale Africaine in French. Thus, all the European leaders accepting that the territory of the Congo was the International African Association NGO business zone made the area to be left in the hands of only those appointed by King Leopold II, or those who had obtained permission or license from him to do business there. And his NGO, or humanitarian society, received donations from many well-wishers dotted around the world. Unfortunately, the kind-hearted people who donated generously to support the International African Association were deceived to think that they were helping to sponsor evangelism and the funding of public development projects in the Congo, as well as helping to stamp out slavery in East Africa, which at that time the Arabs and some European hoodlums were still engaged in, though slavery had been abolished for decades. From 1885 to 1908, King Leopold II enslaved the people of the Congo Free State and ruled them brutally with a tiny cadre of administrators called commissioners, who were drawn from across Europe, but majority were Belgians, and they were supported by an army called the Force Publique that was led by European commanders. Initially, members of the Force Publique were recruited from certain local tribes known for being vindictive, and they were armed with a terrifying leather whip called the chicote that was made from the twisted hide of fully grown hippopotamus or rhinoceros. The chicote was 90 to 150 centimeters, that is 3 to 5 feet long, and was designed to break the skin with each stroke. A year after gaining a firm grip on the Congo Free State, Leopold sent Captain Leon Auguste Theophile Room of the Belgian Carabinier Regiment to the Congo with explicit orders to turn the Force Publique into a fearsome, murderous police cum military hybrid force. And Leopold II promoted Leon Room to the rank of Commandant of the Force Publique on 17th August 1886. Commandant Leon Room lived up to Leopold's expectations and built for the monarch a personal fiendish army which had 2 divisions, namely an officer corps comprising only white men and an African regiment which served under the white officers. And to create an unsympathetic killer troop and prevent mutinies, the native soldiers initially recruited were replaced with non-Congo Africans. Eventually, the officer corps had 648 Belgians, 112 Italians, 53 Danes, 47 Swedes, 26 Norwegians, and a few other whites recruited from the United Kingdom and the United States of America, whilst the African regiment comprised an ethnically mixed group recruited or conscripted from vicious warrior tribes living on the fringes of the Congo Free State, whilst others were mercenaries recruited from Zanzibar, northern Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. And the entire Force Publique Army, that is, both the whites and Africans, were trained to dehumanize, maim, and kill the natives without any qualms. The most dreaded Force Publique troop were the Zapo Zaps. They were a particularly vicious tribe the Belgians recruited from the eastern Kasai region of the Congo, and were trained not only to maim or kill their victims, but were encouraged to cook and eat their victims as well. Thus, cannibalism was used in some instances to whip people in line. To minimize the expenditure on ammunition to the lowest levels and thereby increase profit margins, King Leopold instructed the commissioners and the force commanders to pass a law that was aimed at discouraging the African soldiers from using their ammunition to hunt game for meat. And so, to ensure that each shot fired was accounted for, the law was that every time a native was killed, the Force Publique person who fired the shot had to chop off and deliver the right hand of the dead victim. Also, a soldier could earn his discharge from the service if he could fill a prescribed basket with severed hands. Thus, in instances where the Force Publique were without their commanders, the African soldiers hunted game and, after enjoying the meat, raided villages and chopped off the hands of those rounded up and left them to take care of their wounds, whilst they took the severed hands back to camp to account for the ammunition used. A missionary reported that Commandant Leon Room was fond of decorating his garden with the hands and heads submitted to him by his soldiers. The missionary personally counted 21 chopped off heads and several severed hands of murdered natives that Commandant Leon Room had used to decorate his garden. Using the fiendish Force Publique and his malevolent commissioners and commanders, King Leopold II turned the Congo into his money-making machine by building upon his devilish policies he had outlined in the letter to the missionaries, and made life in the Congo Free State a waking nightmare, the likes of which the modern world has never seen before, not even during the Nazi Reich under Adolf Hitler. Leopold II generated his fortune from two main resources: first ivory and then later rubber. And because of Dunlop's discovery of how to galvanize rubber during the Industrial Revolution era, the demand for rubber to produce pneumatic tires for bicycles and automobiles outstripped the demand for ivory. And this then ballooned the afflictions of the people of the Congo to monstrous levels. Leopold considered the natives of the Congo as slaves squatting on his land. So he made the administrators and the commanders set quotas for each adult male, and they had to work 20 days per month to meet their rubber quotas as their tax or rent for occupying the land. And it was only when their quota was deemed to have been met that the workers would be spared the time they needed to use to produce food to feed their families. However, those who could not meet their quotas were flogged between 25 to 100 lashes with the chicote. Many natives died from the flogging, and in some instances, the right hands of the children or wives of the workers were chopped off at the wrist for failing to meet their quota. In other instances, though married men who had met their quotas were duly permitted to go and work